Welcome back. You're watching Power Breakfast on cnbc TV 18. Well, as we kickstart earnings season, a lot of factors can impact the overall performance. Now, this includes global growth concerns, China's slowdown, as well as the rupee and crude movement. We spoke to a whole host of market experts on what they are expecting from the Q3 earnings and which sectors are likely to do well. Hear out what they had to say.
This year is going to be a year of banking. I'm very clear about that, and consumption. So while we may, at various interval of time discuss about capex and cyclicals, the fact of the matter over the last few years has been sectors which have delivered earnings growth has been private banks or financials, if you can include NBFC, auto, IT, and consumer to an extent. This year, auto is looking a bit shaky at the moment, but maybe over the next 3-4 months we'll get more clarity over there. So, our approach has been the same. Build a nucleus of the portfolio around this 4-5 sectors, spend 80% of time there, and then rest 20% you can, spread it over the other 10-11 sectors. But the big call for 2019 is this is going to be a year of banking.
I think it will be a reasonable quarter for IT, given that we make too much about the rupee being a tailwind or a headwind. I think they are mostly hedged, and rupee weakness or strength may not play out. It will be a status quo as that goes. So we think treasury profit will be the one which will be key, but we think that in the large cap TCS could be outperform. However, we think Infosys is a dark horse, given that they've been guiding very positively, and some of their Europe-centric business may show a lot of return. So it will be TCS, Infosys and Mindtree in the mid caps, which had a disastrous quarter last quarter, but this quarter we think some of the verticals may play out on the positive side. We think these three stocks could be relative outperformers on the earnings front.
I think this time BFSI is going to be a very clear banking versus the NBFC space, and BFSI in banking is going to do pretty well, especially the corporate banks based on loan growth as well as recovery in the bond portfolio. So this is going to be two legs basically where this corporate banks would be running, and they are going to show stellar numbers there. On the contrast, basically NBFC space is going to be much challenged, definitely because of growth, and though their cost of capital would have come down a bit, but I think they would be challenged for growth. So I think that is kind of a contrast we're going to see in the BFSI space this time.
All right, so that's a whole host of expert opinion coming in as far as the third quarter earnings are concerned. So let's go to the opening batsman as usual, IndusInd Bank, the stock to watch out for, reports its earnings today. Abhishek, as always, is here with us with what to expect. Abhishek, the stock was higher yesterday, but generally, what does one expect from IndusInd Bank?
This may not be a steady quarter, Mangalam, for IndusInd Bank, and for the first time, analysts on street are expecting a profit decline on a YOY basis, and that is on account of IL&FS exposure. So Nomura expects a slippage of 2,400 crores, that is against 420 crore on a sequential basis. So provisions are expected to remain elevated on account of the exposure to IL&FS. Now remember that in the IL&FS, only IndusInd Bank is the bank that has an exposure at the holding company level, and the overall exposure over there is about 3,000 crores. So loan growth expected to remain 23 to 25%. Last quarter it was at 32.5%, but the credit deposit ratio that was at 97%. So for the loan growth to happen, you need to see deposit momentum picking up, and Q3 was not a good quarter for deposit growth because we saw liquidity crisis. So net interest margin expected to remain above 3.8%. The low cost deposit ratio actually should aid your net interest margin. Low cost deposit ratio was at 43.5%. Asset quality.
All right, Abhishek, I apologize. We have to cut across to President Donald Trump, who's currently addressing the United States and the world, where he is expected to make a pitch for border wall funding.
No way to promptly return them back home to their country. America proudly welcomes millions of lawful immigrants who enrich our society and contribute to our nation. But all Americans are hurt by uncontrolled, illegal migration. It strains public resources and drives down jobs and wages. Among those hardest hit are African Americans and Hispanic Americans. Our southern border is a pipeline for vast quantities of illegal drugs, including meth, heroin, cocaine, and fentanyl. Every week, 300 of our citizens are killed by heroin alone, 90% of which floods across from our southern border. More Americans will die from drugs this year than were killed in the entire Vietnam War. In the last 2 years, ICE officers made 266,000 arrests of aliens with criminal records, including those charged or convicted of 100,000 assaults, 30,000 sex crimes, and 4,000 violent killings. Over the years, thousands of Americans have been brutally killed by those who illegally entered our country, and thousands more lives will be lost if we don't act right now. This is a humanitarian crisis, a crisis of the heart, and a crisis of the soul. Last month, 20,000 migrant children were illegally brought into the United States, a dramatic increase. These children are used as human pawns by vicious coyotes and ruthless gangs. 1 in 3 women are sexually assaulted on the dangerous trek up through Mexico. Women and children are the biggest victims, by far, of our broken system. This is the tragic reality of illegal immigration on our southern border. This is the cycle of human suffering that I am determined to end. My administration has presented Congress with a detailed proposal to secure the border and stop the criminal gangs, drug smugglers, and human traffickers. It's a tremendous problem. Our proposal was developed by law enforcement professionals and border agents at the Department of Homeland Security. These are the resources they have requested to properly perform their mission and keep America safe. In fact, safer than ever before. The proposal from Homeland Security includes cutting-edge technology for detecting drugs, weapons, illegal contraband, and many other things. We have requested more agents, immigration judges, and bed space to process the sharp rise in unlawful migration fueled by our very strong economy. Our plan also contains an urgent request for humanitarian assistance and medical support. Furthermore, we have asked Congress to close border security loopholes so that illegal immigrant children can be safely and humanely returned back home. Finally, as part of an overall approach to border security, law enforcement professionals have requested $5.7 billion for a physical barrier. At the request of Democrats, it will be a steel barrier rather than a concrete wall. This barrier is absolutely critical to border security. It's also what our professionals at the border want and need. This is just common sense. The border wall would very quickly pay for itself. The cost of illegal drugs exceeds $500 billion a year, vastly more than the $5.7 billion we have requested from Congress. The wall will also be paid for indirectly by the great new trade deal we have made with Mexico. Senator Chuck Schumer, who you will be hearing from later tonight, has repeatedly supported a physical barrier in the past, along with many other Democrats. They changed their mind only after I was elected president. Democrats in Congress have refused to acknowledge the crisis, and they have refused to provide our brave border agents with the tools they desperately need to protect our families and our nation. The federal government remains shut down for one reason, and one reason only, because Democrats will not fund border security. My administration is doing everything in our power to help those impacted by the situation. But the only solution is for Democrats to pass a spending bill that defends our borders and reopens the government. This situation could be solved in a 45-minute meeting. I have invited congressional leadership to the White House tomorrow to get this done. Hopefully, we can rise above partisan politics in order to support national security. Some have suggested a barrier is immoral. then why do wealthy politicians build walls, fences, and gates around their homes? They don't build walls because they hate the people on the outside, but because they love the people on the inside. The only thing that is immoral is the politicians to do nothing and continue to allow more innocent people to be so horribly victimized. America's heart broke the day after Christmas when a young police officer in California was savagely murdered in cold blood by an illegal alien who just came across the border. The life of an American hero was stolen by someone who had no right to be in our country. Day after day, precious lives are cut short by those who have violated our borders. In California, an Air Force veteran was raped, murdered, and beaten to death with a hammer.
Okay, so that's President Donald Trump talking about the border wall and the need for that, saying that the women and the children are the biggest victim of that. We will keep getting you more details from that, but on that note, we'll slip into a short break, come back with more.